Okay, good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and call the order. Madam Clerk? Here.
Here.
Commissioner Bill? Here. Commissioner Johnson-Padilla?
Here.
Commissioner Ross?
Here.
Stand for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is a special commission meeting. I will ask if there's any addition, deletions or withdrawals from the agenda associated with the special commission meeting. Having none, we're going to go ahead and read ordinance 2018-04. Village Attorney, if you'd be so kind.
Yes, Madam Mayor. This is ordinance 2018-04 on second reading. It is an ordinance of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, authorizing the borrowing of money from Florida Community Bank, N.A. for the refinancing of an existing loan in an amount not to exceed $297,000, approving the form of and the execution and delivery of a loan agreement with Florida Community Bank, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, we have two ways to do this. We usually open up for public comments first, but I have no problem with having discussion first and then opening for public comments as it's currently written. Any objection? Okay, open for public comments from the commission.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you well. It sounds garbled.
What I said, if there's no objection, the way we did it last time, I don't have any objection. If you want to open it for the commission first and then have the public comments, just so the public can hear what we have to say, and therefore they can have public comments afterwards, if there's no objection from the commission. Are there any public comments from?
We have to open for public comments for this specific ordinance.
Right, but we
as
did it
well
last time
as
afterwards. That's what they
okay.
preferred. I don't care either way. Village Attorney, does it matter?
It doesn't matter as long as it is made open for public comments before the vote is taken on the ordinance.
You want to do it first? That's fine. Okay, public comments first.
Did we read the ordinance title? Is it on the ordinance or it's public comments?
Public comments on the ordinance.
Oh, on the ordinance.
But no, this is a special meeting. But you're welcome. But you're welcome to come up and make public comments anyway. Please come on up. No problem.
It's on the agenda.
No problem, Amy. No problem. Come on up, Amy.
Mayor, may I make a suggestion?
Yes.
There is the format of your agenda is the normal one that you because the clerk just uses the same format. There is a provision right immediately after the ordinance for public comments that don't necessarily pertain to the ordinance that you could defer if the speaker or any speaker wants to speak to any other item. You could make that time open at that point as opposed to just the ordinance for the public hearing right now.
If the resident would not object, that way we could get through our business and then have a public comment. Would you object to that?
Object.
To
Waiting?
To wait till after we finish with the ordinance and then come back and we'll open it up for public comments again. Sorry to make you walk. Thank you so much. Okay.
This is a public hearing for the ordinance.
Public hearing for the ordinance only. Thank you.
Clear. Chuck Ross, 11166 Griffin Boulevard. I'm disappointed the way this whole thing was brought about. There's been several issues about how it was worded, whether there was a savings or wasn't a savings. As it turns out, there's not a savings. It's probably about a $10,000 cost when you figure in the attorney's fees for to draft the agreement and our attorney's fees, $7,500 plus I heard it's approximately $2,500. And now that it's been a year later, the interest cost is about kind of savings. The interest savings is pretty much kind of a wash for a couple of reasons. One reason is we're actually paying, we're tacking on a little extra money to the loan. And that we would have been in October. In other words, we would have just paid it off in October. We would have been down to 287. But the way we're going to be now, we're going to start off with 297, and we're going to have a slightly lower payment. So because we're going to have a slightly lower payment, we're going to pay off 6 months later. We're actually flat practically on. There's hardly any savings at all. And unfortunately, there was a discussion. An email exchange approximately a year ago where It seems that our attorney, John Hearn, and the banker at the time, who's no longer at that bank, agreed that the amount in the control account was limited to the 6-month installments, and then we could withdraw. So we could have withdrawn the money, and we should have withdrawn the money in June of 17, but we didn't. And now we're kind of faced with this situation where we're going through this procedure, it's costing us money, and the reason that we're doing it is because we don't want to fight with the bank to withdraw the money that apparently we agreed with the bank that we could have withdrawn in June of 17. So I'm disappointed with the whole thing. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Jared Susi, 1030 Northeast 120th Street. First off, I just got the email from the village about 28 hours ago with all the complete loan documents. I know that there was probably some confusion on who was supposed to be providing them. I think that was from last meeting. Our attorney mentioned that. But I did some research last night, and I'm going to hand out some little handouts. They're interesting. Share over there. I'm going to go through this really quick. So, in my research, just some web searching on good old interwebs, Florida Community Bank, they're being purchased by Synovus. Is that correct? I'm not sure how you say it, but for a $2.9 billion acquisition, it's in the process right now. Then, as my searches kept going, Synovus has multitudes of lawsuits being settled for major large cash. On the second page, you'll see it. $11.75 million in cash, from 2009 complaints, and then it was finally settled in 2013. Synovus settles for $24 million on overdraft fee lawsuits. The lawsuit was filed in 2010. Covers a period from 2004 to 2014. The second to last page, that's stapled. This is another lawsuit that Synovus is in. City of Pompano Beach, General Employees Retirement System versus Synovus Financial Corp. Class action complaint for violation of the federal security laws. The last page shows how many reports were filed to ripoffreport.com. It was in the web search that came up, but it's showing almost 75,000 reports. And then the last one, which is loose, is from Florida Community Bank. It only shows 2 reports on the ripoff report, and this can all be put in public record if you want. Anyone else wants to see it? The reason why I'm bringing this up is, first off, it hasn't been made public, from what I've heard. We should have probably gone ahead and researched them before forcing this through. I'd just like to have everyone know what's going on with this bank. It literally took me 2 hours to research it.
Thank you, sir.
I think that it should have been done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments regarding the ordinance? Okay, open for public discussion, open for discussion on the commission. Commissioner, go ahead.
Yeah, I got one question. So the $200,000 that we now can use for other things,
Yes,
now that will be interest bearing?
Yes.
Whereas in this account, it was not.
absolutely.
What's the interest? Just out of curiosity, I mean, it's not a...
We have Rafael Barrero from Florida Community Bank here.
Good evening, Commissioners. Interest right now you're getting is 0.80, but we're going to raise it up to 1.1 starting tomorrow.
Okay.
And that money can be withdrawn at any time, correct, sir?
Yes, it's going to be in your general operating account unless you decide to open a separate account.
It's $2,000 a year?
$2,000 a year, you weren't getting a minute ago, so.
Okay, so $2,000 a year plus, what is that, 15 years?
Mhm.
So $30,000 that we weren't getting before. Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions for?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, I shared with everyone a couple of meetings ago when we were talking about this refinance, the email from our attorney who consulted the bank executive in the summer of 2017, June, I believe it was. And he was told that the funds that were over and above the payment could be moved and did not have to stay in the control account. And for some reason, we didn't take that move. And instead, we went ahead and started migrating our accounts to Florida Community Bank, and as well as talking about the refinancing of this loan based on the belief that the funds were tied up, when in fact they were not. I just feel from the beginning of this migration, I've felt a little at odds with it, and but we did it. We've taken the steps and we've moved most of our accounts, most of the money over to Florida Community Bank already, except for this 200 and the obligation on the loan. So we're here today, and what is more troubling to me today is that staff in the memo and in the ordinance continue to say and claim that we're going to have a savings, when in fact we're not. I mean, they say in the ordinance there's going to be a reduction in the monthly payment or in the annual payment, and of course that reduction just means it takes that much longer to pay. That means it takes that much more interest that gets earned during that time, because the time is money and interest. So unless the ordinance and the backup materials that are presented to us say right at the front that what the cost of this loan is, what the cost of this refinance is, which is approximately $10,000, I'm going to have a hard time agreeing to do it, because I think that we're being a little deceitful, claiming that we are going to have a savings when in fact we're not. It's not a question for the bank.
Oh, I
That's just
wasn't
a
sure.
discussion between us. The way it's presented by staff, and nothing against Florida Community Bank. I know there are other municipalities that bank with you, and that's great. But the way that we're conducting our business here, I feel like it's not as transparent as it should be.
Then let me address that. Number one, when we started this, it was over a year ago, started moving the accounts. The goal was not because to free up the $200,000 nearly as much as the better interest rates that we were getting offered on the loan. We unfortunately had to delay that to finish the 2016 audit. By the time we'd finished that audit, the interest rate had gone up. We approached City National Bank. We have it in writing from them that they are not relinquishing our $220,000. That is held as collateral. And we've asked a number of times. I realize we can fight that if you want. And so I think we could spend $10,000 fighting that, or we can, move to a bank that actually appreciates us. As far as moving the other accounts, we're now getting a better interest rate on those, I believe. And so we're earning money on all of our accounts at FCB. And so as far as how it's been presented, it has been back and forth. We thought originally there was going to be a $5,100 savings. We've looked at it again, and it was brought up, and we were like, no, that's not quite accurate. And so that has been changed. It is reflective. Nowhere, I don't believe it says that we actually are saving money in this or the ordinance. It does say the payment's $200 less than the current payment. I could be wrong about that. If you see somewhere in there where it does say we're saving, please let me know.
Nowhere does it say that we're paying $10,000 in attorney's fees for the refinance, and I think that that's an important piece of information that we
Okay.
are omitting from this presentation.
Okay.
You have to dig deep into that PDF file to go to the closing statement, and maybe there's one other reference to it to go, oh, it's costing us $10,000. Well,
Yes.
you know, most of our residents are not going to dig through 48 pages of legal documents to try to discern what
Okay.
it's all about. We should be saying these things right at the face of it.
The issue I have here is that, and I don't mean to be abrupt here, but if we had done this a year ago, we wouldn't be in this position. We wouldn't be sitting here arguing over the costs. We would have not had that situation. Second of all, the issue I have is that we discussed this thoroughly, and I do mean thoroughly at the last meeting. It was agreed upon at that point. There was no discussion. We were going with it, so now we're not, or now you're second guessing that. We discussed this $7,500, and we also discussed the maximum of $2,500 for the attorney. It isn't necessarily $10,000. That is the estimate of what it would be. Attorney Heron has not told us what the cost would be yet. That was a max. Is that correct, Attorney Heron?
That is, the amount will not exceed $10,000. The $7,500, the bulk of that $10,000 is $7,500 that is going to pay for the bank's legal counsel who prepared the documents when prior to the meeting last week, when I was made aware of that figure, I did provide that information to the commission and did say that publicly, that that's what what Florida Community Bank would be charging, and that our fee would not exceed $2,500.
Right, and that was disclosed at our last meeting, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I have a question, if I may, for you, sir. Since
ahead.
one other person, could you please tell me the fiscal condition of Florida Community Bank as it is currently rated?
We're a 5-star rated bank by Bauer. We were just ranked number 8 by Forbes as one of the top 10 American banks. We were number 10 last year. And yes, we are being bought by Synovus Bank. It's been public knowledge for 2 months, at least. We are a publicly traded company. We have to adhere to applicable SEC and OTC, and pretty much any banking regulatory agency out there. So it's been out there for a while, but it's not, in my opinion, it's not a reason for concern whatsoever. Mergers unfortunately happen.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I've got one other question, if I may. So it's going to cost us $10,000. We're going to make $30,000 on interest that we wouldn't make before. 30,000 less 10,000 is a $10,000 savings, I think.
What?
Unless there's something.
$20,000. $20,000. $20,000 in profit, more money than we'd make
So
before.
we
Yeah.
are, in fact, even though I may not say it in there, we now are making $20,000 in interest. We're not making $20,000 in interest?
We're making $30,000 over the length of the loan if we keep it in
The net gain would be
there.
about 20,000. That's assuming that you only get 1%. The rates themselves are rising, but at this point, what I've told the village manager is it's not so much the savings as it is getting your hands on the funds that you do
Right.
not have on.
Okay.
I mean, according to not even my calculations, according to the state of Florida, last year the village received $239,000 and a half cents tax that gets now held hostage by City National Bank. I mean, that was a bad deal to begin with. It's by far one of the worst deals
I'm
I've
sorry,
seen.
but the loan documents
Excuse me, please do
don't
not
say that.
interrupt him. Please allow him to finish, and then we're happy to speak. Thank you.
Now, based on the estimate, and the state of Florida has estimated that the village will now receive in this year, 2018, $251,000. Again, this is funds that are being held hostage by City National Bank for one reason or another. The loan documents say that they can do it, or in certain cases, you have to ask them for permission, but asking for permission doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to give it to you. The bottom line is they have it, you don't. On top of that, you're not earning any interest. On top of that, the loan documents allow them to charge you for holding their money. Whether they do or don't, I do not know. I do not have those statements. But it's a bad deal. What this loan does is gets the village out of a bad deal. Furthermore, it also frees this money so that you could put it down as future pledges should you need arise for a loan. Suppose you need some sort of infrastructure loan. Right now, as it is, you can't pledge any money against this money because it's already been pledged. What we're doing now is we're releasing the pledge on that income, that source of revenue, the half sales tax that you can later use if you need to get a bigger loan, $5, $6, $10 million, whatever it is. So it is not just a matter of saving money. It's just what can you do with the money, whether you want to spend it to get I remember in the last meeting, public works director, whatever it is that you need. You could use it for anything. But more importantly, it is yours to use as opposed to being locked away in a cabinet.
Commissioner Ross. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I take exception to your interpretation of the loan documents, but that's not what you're here to answer. Regardless of how we got here, and I believe it was on a false premise because the original loan documents don't call for collateralizing it, the loan with the entire half-penny sales tax. We're here today, and there's going to be a vote. I just would like for the information to be on the face of the ordinance rather than just have a statement that says, oh, our loan payment's going to be $200 less. Well, that is, I think that falsely represents that there is a savings. And whatever interest is earned over whatever period of time, we don't know. But the fact is, we're going to write a check for $10,000 plus $4,500 to complete the payoff to the other bank. And those are unbudgeted expenditures that we're going to write this year. So I would like the public and anyone who reads this to know that we are expending these funds in 2017-18 that were not provided for in our budget. And to me, that would be transparency.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Tudor.
First, okay. Transparency. The one thing I think that we need, the information that we need on this loan that I don't think is being conveyed necessarily to the public is, and Commissioner Bilt kind of touched on it, is the interest that this 220 is put into an interest-bearing account, let's say at 1% for the 12-year period of the loan, then you're looking at $28,036.91 roughly. That's just going through a simple calculator. So I understand that that is part of the equation that we have to look at. That, first of all, the monies are going to be freed up. And we can argue that there was an email for a year ago, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago that said to our former attorney that this money is free and clear, but the information we have currently, that we have to rely on the current information, because we're not going to track down that gentleman and ask him to go work for the bank again and free up our money. We're going to have to operate with the bank that we're operating with now, and they're telling us that money we can't touch. So, you know, I understand the idea of transparency, but what I don't want to do is hang out the term transparency and underneath that just put in whatever little variables we want that feeds a certain narrative. I think we need to have it all in there. There are going to be closing costs. We're looking at approximately $10,000 in closing costs. However, that is now going to free up the $220,000 for if we need it for some type of situation that comes up. If we don't, and that money can be left untouched in that account, it's going to earn interest. And if it were to, in a perfect world, be untouched multiple years, now we're looking at actually not just making up those closing costs, but actually making money on top of those closing costs. So I think things are getting a little bit too lost into almost, you know, I hate to throw up, it's getting a little bit too theatrical right now. I think we need to stick to the information here and make a decision based on information. The one piece of information that I wish was brought out a little bit further, and I talked to the manager about this, is what would be the earnings on the interest for that money in the account. That's really, I think, the piece that I think would help alleviate some people's concerns. Others it may not, but I think for some people it would alleviate their concerns. And also I think it would give a clearer picture, and it would definitely fall underneath the definition of transparency if we include all of that. But, you know, I think we're kind of going a little off the rails here on this, and I think we need to kind of rein it back in and focus on the actual facts that we have here. I don't want to talk about what a bank employee said a year ago who's no longer there. I want to operate on the information that we have before us right now.
And the advice of our attorney, if I may.
Yes.
Current attorney who had discussed this previously, that would cost us quite a significant amount to fight it if we did. what you stated.
My educated guess is that the village would expend in excess of $2,500 for us to pursue protracted negotiations and, God forbid, litigation against Community National Bank.
City National.
City National Bank, I'm sorry. City National Bank, where the money currently is being held. I agree with Mr. Hearn's assessment of what those loan documents say. And I recall that I said that very specifically when this item was up for first reading, but also told you that the cost of going to battle with the bank to try and recover those funds would in all likelihood exceed the $2,500. With respect to the $2,500 that is put in the closing statement, I want everyone to be clear, is that's a not to exceed. Even while that dollar figure wasn't necessarily anticipated when the legal budget was approved at last fiscal year, we are below our estimated expenses for legal fees for this fiscal year that will end. So it's there, it's budget. Even if you include the $7,500 that has to be paid to Greensboro Martyr and considered to be as an outside counsel expense, for lack of a better description, it's still within the budgeted funds for legal services. And I can give you, and I will be able to at the end of the month, to be able to give you the specific numbers when we close out the month for legal services. But I can tell you now that we have spent, as a firm, more than 10 hours in putting these documents and talking to the bank and generating all the paperwork that is before you. And we will not charge in excess of that $2,500 fee. And if you wish, that can be reflected on the invoice that we generate, that the hours will be shown, and it'll be shown as a no charge. I told you a week ago or even before then that we would not spend more money on your behalf on this matter than that figure, and I hold that's my commitment, and I stand by it.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson-Sardella.
I just have a couple of words. I mean, I agree pretty much with what Vice Mayor...
I'm sorry, could you put the mic a little closer? Thank you.
I agree pretty much with what Vice Mayor Tudor has said. We can only move forward on this based on the facts that we have. I understand an email from a year ago. Also, I was about to say, and I think it's already been said adequately, if we're going to talk about disclosing and transparency, I do agree that I would have liked to have seen what we would have gotten off of the fact that the money that's coming out of this account now and the interest, and also the cost on the flip side, if we fought with the bank to get that money, I know it would be in excess of $2,500. From my own practice, a lot of places do not accept just a demand letter saying, give me what I want. We might very well have to have litigated that. So, I mean, I agree with the concept of transparency, but I want us to be careful not to cherry pick what we're transparent about. But like I said, I pretty much agree with what Vice Mayor Tudor's already said. I'm not going to belabor. We have what we have in front of us now. And I did look through myself to see whether or not there was anything in here that still referred to a savings, because I agree that we shouldn't use that word if that's not what happens when you balance all of this. And I don't think that I did see anything.
Thank you. If there's, Commissioner Ross, I'm sorry, Commissioner Ross, if you want to go ahead and finish up, and then we're going to go ahead and take a motion and see if there's one.
Okay. So, there is a whereas clause that says the estimated refinancing semi-annual payment of $15,747 is about $200 less. It should say less than the current loan, but it says less the current loan. And that statement infers that there is a savings. Now, we do have to go with the facts as they exist today. And the facts as they exist today haven't given us any interest payment, so we can't say we have a savings because in the future, we expect to get interest payments. But we are definitely going to have to wire transfer approximately $10,000 to Florida Community Bank, and we are going to have to wire transfer $45.24 and 33 cents to City National Bank, and those are two items that are not budgeted expenditures, and that we could say as a fact. The fact is that we're going to have to write that check before the closing, before September 30th, 2018. That's something that's missing from here. It's buried deep into the documents, and I think that we should make that disclosure right on the face of the ordinance. And if you don't, then I'm sorry, I think it's deceitful, because from day one we were told there are no closing costs. There were no closing costs, this isn't going to cost us anything. And it was when it came to first reading, or maybe before that, that I said to the manager, wait, the loan commitment letter says we need to pay their attorney's fees. Right. What is that amount going to be? And we started out with a number of 5,000, then it went to 6,000. Now we know it's 7,500. It's not going to go down from that, plus whatever our attorney is going to charge us, which is maxed out at 25. If we don't put those representations in the front, then we're not being honest, and we're not being transparent.
Manager Manners, would you have any final comments here and your recommendations, please?
Can we, I mean, at this point, can we change the ordinance to?
No.
No, we can't.
No.
So then,
I'd ask the attorney if we could include that statement.
Well,
I'm sorry. One at a time. Commissioner Johnson-Sirleaf, go ahead.
I apologize. I just wanted to thank Jared for bringing this stuff. I didn't want to leave it without commenting of the information that he brought before us. I did look at it. Some of the things are from several years ago. And I just looked up on the SEC's website just to double check to make sure there's nothing current, but I did want to stop and just thank you for bringing the information to our attention.
Anything else?
Sorry.
Thank you. No, that's okay. So, Attorney Herron.
If I may, we can change the whereas clauses, and I'll get to that in a moment. But the body of the ordinance, no, we can't. It's already been reviewed and approved by, and actually includes language that was told to us by the bank's counsel that we had to include. So that is essentially set in stone. But to Commissioner Ross's concern about transparent truthfulness, we can, and it's not that hard, and we're probably going to have to do this anyway, because I saw that there's the NA, which is part of the bank's official name, is in the wrong place in the title of the ordinance. I read it correctly, but we'll take care of that. Is to the fifth whereas clause that references the 200 less the current loan amount. It can, if we're talking about candidly, truthfulness, and transparency, we can just simply say, whereas the estimated refinance semi-annual payment is $15,747, and delete the rest. And they would just said, and then the next whereas clause. So there isn't any reference to any dollar less, if that's the concern that there's something that's being misleading here. I have no problem, and there isn't any legal reason why we couldn't make that change here this evening, because the documents are all going to be signed either this evening or tomorrow morning. And we can swap out the first page of the ordinance.
I have no objection or for that or against it. It's no problem if it's misleading, or the assumption is that we're paying less and then somehow there's a savings. I think this is wordsmithing, but if it makes people more comfortable, I have zero problem with it. I have no problem with it.
$200 less.
Yes, we would delete the.
But I'm saying, is it in fact $200 less?
I don't know.
let me look at the amortization.
All right, so based on the amortization schedule that was that we have, and matching it against the original amortization that City National had given at the time of the loan, plus the payoff letter, it's not $200 less, it's $56 less. per
Okay,
payment.
so it's
Okay,
wrong.
so that needs to be
So that needs to be withdrawn.
So-
Yeah.
So take it out.
Now, that figure changes because the payoff letter, it was, when we made the initial calculations based on what we saw from the original amortization schedule from when the loan started. There's no way of us knowing if there was any extra payments, which there was obviously not, but there might have been late payments that we're not aware of. And of course, whatever fees that they want to throw on top of the
Okay, but
closing.
rather than I don't want there to be misleading to the public. I'm in
course.
concurrence with that. I appreciate Commissioner Ross bringing that forward. I have no problem with, just take it out. Is there any objections? Do we have a consensus to take it out?
No.
Do we have to have a vote to take it out, or can we just do a consensus?
When you vote to, assuming
Yeah,
you
would-
vote,
yeah.
there's a motion to approve it, you would say
Based on
yes,
amended, as amended. Okay.
And
Is,
if I-
okay, so with that,
And if I may, I want to just do a clarification, point of clarification, and this is more to suit Commissioner Ross. The $4,000 that we're sending over to City National Bank, that should be in your budget because that would have been part of the normal payment that you would have made at the end of October anyhow.
But that would be in the new fiscal year, not in the current fiscal year.
Of course, because
So-
it carries over.
Right, but for this budget year, we've made the payments that we budgeted already to the bank. It's a technicality.
Yeah, it's a technicality, but I just to make sure that we're all on the same page, because, I mean, I'm an old school banker. Despite my youthful looks, I've been in banking for 20 years, and the one reason why I've survived this long is because I've always been a man of my word. I've always done the right thing by our clients. You know, at one point, I did tell Christian, if we don't close on this loan and the rates go up, then it really doesn't make any sense for the town, for the village, to go ahead with the loan. This is me telling him, no, forget about the loan. Unless you really just want the $220,000 that's sitting in that account, it really doesn't make any sense. This is me, you know, tossing away $297,000 in loans that would have went in my book that I don't benefit from. Whether you pass a resolution or not, I don't get any extra money on it. But I've lasted this long because I've had a good reputation of giving my clients a good deal. And if I thought this was a bad deal, I wouldn't be standing here. I would have told Christian, that's it. It doesn't make any sense. You're not going to pass it. It doesn't make any sense for me to stand up there. Now, as for the attorney fees are I'm sorry, let me backtrack a little. The closing costs, there were no closing costs. Typically, there are closing costs in any loan. In the municipal loans, there's more of a commitment fee. We waived it. We waived it because you're our clients. We waived it because we looked at your numbers. We figured, we're going to make enough money off the regular loan. We don't need to really nickel and dime you. That's what happened in the first deal. It made no sense for us to replace like with like. The attorney fees are typical. I mean, what had happened is we have three parties when it comes to any kind of loan closing. You have the attorney for the city, you have the bond counsel, and then you have the attorney for the bank. Your attorney couldn't act as a bond counsel, and that's fine. It happens. And usually only the major cities have a bond counsel. It would be the Miamis, Hollywood, Sunrises of the world. Our attorney decided to go ahead and be the bond counsel on behalf of the village. Now, the last time that I did a loan with your neighbor to the south, El Portal, they hired their own bond counsel, and it cost them $10,000. And that's besides the fact that they have their own attorney and they paid our attorney. Our attorney is doing it for $4,000. So I understand. I totally get what you're saying about transparency, and I understand these are line items that weren't in the budget that are now. But rest assured that we did everything we could between myself and the manager to reduce the cost to the basic bare minimums to get this job done. And the outcome is you're going to earn interest on money that you did not have, that you don't have access to for one reason or another. Again, it was a bad deal. You're going to have the availability of money to either earn interest, pledge, or just use it to pay employees or what have you. And that really is the end game right now. Again, if this was a bad deal, I just wouldn't be here. None of us would be here.
If I could respond to that in just 2 seconds.
then let's move it on. Please, go ahead. Last two, please.
So I just want to be clear that my comments this evening have very little to do with Florida Community Bank. I don't mean any disparagement to your bank whatsoever.
No, I know.
And I appreciate your being here to further explain and walk us through the bank's perspective. My concerns were more directed towards staff
Yes, I understand.
and
I
the
understand.
transparency and how this was unfolded and presented to us.
No, I understand.
And there are small things that we could do to help it be a little bit clearer and better for the public, and it's my obligation to do that.
I
and bring
totally
those
agree.
things
Listen,
forward.
if you were my commissioner, I would be happy that you're saying all that. When I first was approached by Biscayne Park about taking their accounts, when I saw what was happening to you all, it was bad. I thought what happened to El Portal was bad. What happened to you all was even worse. I mean, you were getting 0.09 interest on $400,000 of the $2 million that you had, which, you know, and I didn't even see the loan. Once I saw the loan, I just started laughing because it was just something that my bank or no other bank that I can think of, and it's not a shot against City National, they did what they did at the time. It's just something I haven't seen since or even before that. So rest assured, it may not be the perfect deal, but it's way better than what you're getting now.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2018-04 as amended.
Is there a second? Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Truman,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Tudor,
Yes.
Commissioner Build,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson Sadera,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross,
No.
Vote passes 4-1. Okay, we're going to open the floor. Thank you very much for all your help. Appreciate you coming forth and answering all of our questions. Appreciate Mr. Susi also bringing that forth to us as well. Thank you. Okay, moving for public comments, generally public comments. Not to do with the ordinance. Thank you for your patience.
Sorry I came tonight, but I questioned about a special commission meeting if public could speak, and I didn't get any answer back, and I didn't know the answer, so I came.
And we're glad you did. Thank you.
So it's time for the art show, the third annual Biscayne Park Art Show again. And we are planning on doing it the week before Valentine's Day, February 9th. We are asking to use the log cabin again as we have in the past 2 years, where the artists come, and we said about 8 artists up in here. They don't use any, they don't put anything on the walls. They have their own equipment to show their work. And so we're asking to waive the fees this year, and that's the first thing I'd like to ask for on behalf of the Art Board.
Okay, thank you. If there's no objection, do we have a consensus to waive the fees for the wonderful art show that is produced? And we thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Any consensus? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
You have waived fees.
Thank you very much. The last thing I wanted to ask is, so since I've come here, I have a question about the email, the village email blast that blasts out to the residents. And the last time I checked, it was like 500 or more people on the list. So I know people who have been a resident here for a long time. In fact, one of them is actually going to be a candidate for commissioner, and she didn't even know about the email list. I mean, she hasn't lived here the whole entire time. She's lived here a lot of the time. She's on Roxy's list, which is a fabulous list. And when Roxy's not doing it anymore, where are we going to get our information? My question is, how do we get more new residents and old residents on the email blast? When they come in as new owners, or they're old owners, how do they have to come to the office and ask to put their email on the list?
No.
What do you do?
They sign up.
they have to subscribe on the website. They have to go to the website and subscribe.
That's
There is
it.
a form
But
there.
does anybody tell them about the website when they first, buy a house here?
If it comes to our attention, we can certainly tell them.
I
You
think
know,
this is
there's been a welcome
this-
kit.
this
that's
is
been-
something-
Yeah,
and-
Myla is pretty good in
Yeah.
explain to them, the new resident. I've seen her doing that.
Milam does.
Who does?
Milam.
Oh,
Mylan,
Mylan
yeah.
explains that to them. There's a
When they
welcome
go to
packet
the village hall.
online, and you could get a link. Okay. Is there any way at this point to get people? How can we send out an email blast, or how can we get information to all these residents except going door to door and telling them that they can get on the website and subscribe? Is there any other way except going door to door and telling residents?
We'll make certain.
Newsletter. Yeah.
Newsletter.
Which Issa said he's been trying to get out since June, and for some reason he hasn't been able to.
It will be coming out soon.
It will be.
be coming out
will?
soon.
Yes.
Yeah. And we'll make sure it's in there. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. So the newsletter, that would be great. That would be really great, because not all people aren't coming to events. They don't know about events, even though we put all these signs out. Okay, good job. All right, thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your comments.
Real quick, I was just thinking, just to her comments about getting information out to residents. we're moving forward with the emergency notification system. It may be a good opportunity to start when we're reaching out to residents for that to also get them on the
Yeah,
the village email
I
list.
talked to you I talked to the manager about this today, that one of the things we need to do is find a way to get more people on the e-blast at the same time that we do the emergency management system, Amy. So that's one of the things we're looking to do, is try and get them at the same time, because there's going to be a need to sign up for both. So I thought it might be, and I didn't ask the commission, but I had mentioned to the manager that maybe at that time we could all do it and make sure there's a way to get it out to everybody at the same time, so they sign up for both. Thank you.
Not that I ever want to follow Amy, but David Raymond, 11520 Northeast 9th Avenue, who's also looking for free space. In the event, Art Gonzalez and I have been back and forth over the last week or so attempting to set up a candidates forum for the commission candidates. And I realize that this Saturday there will be an event, a meet and greet event, which as of just late everybody has agreed to. So thank you everybody who's
And
agreed
what
to
time
that.
is that, and where is it?
It is at 12 o'clock at the rec center, correct?
That's correct.
Nothing to do with me or Art, other than I think we've hopefully convinced everybody to show up at the same time. So, but we, Art and I are interested, if in the event, let me preface it with, if in the event we can speak with and get agreement from all 5 candidates to come to a more formal event, such as, and we haven't worked out the format, whether that be a debate or some kind of working process or something other than just a meet and greet, as took place here back a few years ago, and some of you were sitting up here on the hot seat for that when we had question and answers and things like that. So we would like to do something like that somewhere. I can't give you a date either because we have to run that by the candidates, but we would hope that that would happen before early voting, which I believe is the 17th. So in the event that we can work out the details of that and get all 5 candidates to agree, we would like to be able to use the log cabin for that space.
Might I suggest that before you come before, that you have that agreement and then come before us to do that? And if because doing it, I had heard that this was happening, and several of the candidates had stated to me that they were not, and they would not participate. So I personally don't want to waive a fee until we know we have participation. I have no problem doing that whatsoever. I had the pleasure of sitting up here when we were being shot questions at, but I think it really would be up to the candidates to agree to that first.
I guess between Art and I guess maybe we heard wrong, but we heard that people would be open to that as of a few days ago when we spoke. And I guess my only concern is the next commission meeting will probably take place.
1 week. We have 1 week. We're having a budget hearing, and maybe because I know there's other people and have also approached to want to do the same thing that have mentioned to it. So my thought is that you all maybe could all get together, and if the candidates want it, that's just my thought. Then I have no problem waiving the fee.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I think the commission would probably remember last year when we waived the fee to a group that we got into problems with the Attorney General, saying that in fact we had created a committee, and we created a committee without following all the regulations that we have, and we had to change things. So I think that's something we actually should really look at.
Okay.
Before we agree to
So perhaps, because this is a special meeting with that, perhaps we can discuss this with the attorney regarding the abilities to do that, not to do it, suggest to do it, because I know there were some issues with even sending out emails. So I do remember, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt time, but I do remember, you are correct. I had forgotten about that. We had gotten an AGO's opinion regarding a visioning group that wanted out to have the center out. They were working, and it was judged at that time that they were a committee. And rather than us do this tonight on the dais, would you be so kind as to look into that and then get back with us as to see any problems with it?
Understood. The only thing I would say on that, Madam Mayor, just having worked in government most of my life, I think that was because they wanted to be appointed as a committee. This is just the use of space, and I would hate for any requests that might come forward in the future for a group such as I've tried to propose a civic group or something like that those all get shot down because of one thing that happens.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't want to get in. No,
I know it's a special meeting.
No, and I know what you're saying, and I know your intentions, Mr. Raymond, are nothing but the best for the community.
Thank you. And we did reach out through Nextdoor to anybody else who wanted to participate in the planning of this event, and I've sent messages to people I heard through the grapevine might want to plan an event. I haven't heard back from anybody else, and to my knowledge, neither has Art. So, but anybody here who wants to help plan an event for the candidates, call me, It's out
Okay.
by the house, whatever.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And
If I may, and through the chair, what you're describing, Commissioner Bills, was a very, very distinct and special, different kind of circumstance. For as long as I've lived in this village, there has been a forum where all of the candidates are invited and most of them participate. I can't think of anyone who didn't participate, so that the public gets to have that exposure and learn more about the candidates. And it has always been on village property. It never was an issue before. I would hate for it to become an issue now or in the future. We're small enough that I think we should be able to have that kind of a forum. And there is no other public space that is large enough to accommodate a group of people.
And if I
Thank
make
you,
one
Commissioner
suggestion,
Ross.
because I'm not up for election, so I feel like I can say this comfortably. It was an uncomfortable piece when I sat up here because of the way the questions were made, the compoundness of them, just how they were done. I would highly recommend, because of the polarized nature of our community, that you find very neutral parties, whether outside or not, to do this so that people feel more safe in doing that and they're more welcoming. I personally found it, although supposedly it did very well for me because I'm sitting up here today, I recommend that you find a neutral way to do this, because I do find that individuals are polarized and have their own candidates that they're supporting, and I think that makes a lot of people uneasy. So my recommendation, if you can at all, is get an outside person so that we don't have that here. That's just my recommendation.
Thank you. And we were talking about having an outside moderator for that. It wouldn't be anybody.
Just the
here.
person, even the people making the questions, because I find that to be, I found it personally to be an interesting experience. You do have to think fast on your feet with compound questions, but it did feel like a bit of prosecutorial a bit.
I'll look into it and have
Okay.
have that information.
Thank you very much.
Because years ago,
Before
we
next
did it,
meeting.
we had a civic club, there was already a club organized, so.
Yeah, and that was different, and I think when Mr. Hearn talked about that, the Civic Club wasn't an issue, but other ones were, because, and I'm once again, I'm going to leave that to legal counsel. Okay. Any other public comments? Okay. No old business, no announcements?
Okay. Wednesday, September 26, 2018, 6:30, we have a Public Safety Advisory Board. On Monday, October 1st, 2018, 6:30 p.m., Planning and Zoning Board. Tuesday, October 9, 2018, 7 p.m., Biscayne Park Foundation. Tuesday, October 9, 2018, 7 p.m., Code Compliance Board. And Wednesday, October 10th, 2018, 6 p.m., Public Arts Advisory Board. And our next second budget fiscal year 2018-19 hearing is scheduled for September 25th, 2018, 7 p.m. And our next regular commission meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, October 2nd, 2018, 7 p.m.
Thank you. Without further ado, motion to adjourn. Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.